with, let's see, Apple sign-in, if I remember correctly. And then every week we also released a new video where one of us walks through one of the new code labs so that you can see that we also are actually struggling at some of the steps. And the first week, we taught you how to get started with developing a web app with just a browser. And then in the past 2 weeks, we learned how to build a restaurant review app. First with JavaScript, building just a web app. And then last week, we learned how to build one app for iOS, Android, and web with Flutter. So be sure to check those out in the resources and the agenda also. And finally, don't forget that we also have a demo where you can learn how to implement some common use cases in your application with Firebase. Now back to this week's content. As I said, I'm not an analytics expert, so I need this video. I'm quite sure a lot of you are also looking to learn about this, right? When I was thinking of what do I want to learn, it's like, oh, can somebody please finally explain to me what an open funnel is and how it's different from a closed funnel? And actually, what's a funnel to begin with? And then, right, I was like, what's my big wish list for learning about analytics? And it's like, well, please don't do it in the abstract, right? Show me a real application and how we can use analytics there. And how we can use Google Analytics to actually see more about the behavior of our users and who my users are. So I have no idea if they're going to deliver, but I'm actually quite sure that I'll have more questions about analytics after this video, right? Not everything will be answered in one go. And I'm pretty sure the same applies to you. So if you have any questions, then right below here, you should be seeing a Q&A box and type your questions there. Because once the video is over, we'll all meet back here and we'll then try to address those questions live on camera. Okay, with that, I think we're ready to kickstart everything. So let's all sit back, relax a bit, and enjoy the episode of today, which is called The Firebase Developer's Guide to Google Analytics.
Hello there, and welcome to the Firebase Developer's Guide to Google Analytics. Why the Firebase Developer's Guide to Google Analytics? Well, chances are, if you're a longtime Firebase developer and used analytics for your apps before, you've looked at your analytics data in the Firebase console. And the console is a great place to get a quick, at-a-glance view of how your app is doing and dig into some conversion and event reporting breakdowns. But did you know that if you created your Firebase project after August 2019, your analytics data is available in both the Firebase console and the Google Analytics console as well. That means that you can use a lot of the deeper analysis and reporting tools in Google Analytics via the new App Plus Web property for your Firebase application data. What we found is that not a lot of developers were aware of this, and even if they were, they either didn't know what tools were available in GA or weren't sure about how to use them effectively. And thus, we present to you the Firebase Developer's Guide to Google Analytics. This is our attempt at helping Firebase developers get more familiar and more productive with the suite of Google Analytics tools to more deeply understand their Firebase app data. In this video, we'll be covering the following features in the GA console. First, the Comparison Analysis tool, which allows you to make side-by-side comparisons of different user groups based on things like platform, language, or more audience criteria that you can customize. We'll then present the Segment Overlap Analysis tool, which provides a visual and tabularized form of data to more deeply understand your user segments and find out where they overlap. We're also going to cover the funnel analysis technique available in GA. For Firebase developers out there who have used funnels in the Firebase console before, but were less than happy when they found out that they were open funnels, you'll be glad to know that the GA console provides advanced funnel analyses that use closed funnels by default. More on that a bit later. For now, I think the most helpful thing would be to take a quick tour of the Google Analytics console to get a feel for the tools available there and where to find them. Now, if only I had someone who is an expert at Google Analytics to give me this tour.
Oh, hey, Sumit.
Oh, hey, Kevin. For those of you who don't know, Kevin is the product manager for Google Analytics for Firebase. He's literally the best person to give us a tour of Google Analytics. Thanks for dropping in, Kevin.
Yeah, no problem. So some features in the Google Analytics console are exactly the same as what you'd find in the Firebase console. So you may recognize a lot of similarities between the two interfaces. But what's unique about what you'd find in Google Analytics is that it offers a much more advanced set of analysis tools to help you get deeper insights into who your users are and how they're using your app. Now let's take a look. This is Bingo Blast, a bingo game available on both the Play Store and the App Store. And if you like playing bingo, definitely feel free to give it a try. Now, I'm currently on the home page for my Bingo Blast Google Analytics property. Here, I can take a quick overview of how my app is doing by looking at some key metrics like user engagement and retention, which countries my users are coming from, and which events they're logging most frequently. There are also cards that show the sources and mediums from which my users are finding my app, as well as the revenue breakdown below. Now, this homepage looks very similar to the analytics dashboard in Firebase, except with the new interface and more information with easier to access filtering options and reporting sections. But if you really miss the Firebase reporting view, you can actually switch to it by clicking on the drop-down at the top left of the console and selecting Firebase reporting. But let's stick to the Google Analytics reporting interface for now to show you some of the cleaner and easier to access features I mentioned. For example, you can easily adjust the date ranges for the reporting data you want to see in each card and jump into more detailed Explore reports by clicking on the link within the card. Going back up to the top, there's also a unique feature here called Insights, which provides automatically generated insights into your data. You can think of these as the headlines telling you what's going on with your app. It's our way of surfacing up information so you don't have to do it yourself. Now let's take a look at some of the other sections of the Google Analytics console. Right under the home screen, there's the real-time view, which is similar to the stream view in Firebase. It provides a real-time view of how many users have been active in the last 30 minutes and where in the world and which online networks they're coming from and what events they're triggering in your app. Under that is the report section. This is the grouping of standard Google Analytics reports about your users and their demographics, like country, age, gender, and interests. There's also a behavior report that gives you more information about your users' behaviors, like which screens they're spending the most time on. And below that is a technology report, which provides a breakdown of your data by platform, app versions, and device models. We also released a new set of reports just for game developers that you can access using the switcher. But for this video, let's stick to the default. Moving on, we have the events section, which provides a detailed breakdown of the conversions and events that your users are generating in your app. These reports are almost identical to the ones in Firebase. And below that is the Explore section of Google Analytics. This is where some of the deep analysis and data exploration tools of Google Analytics live. This will be the most interesting area to explore in this video, and we'll be taking a deeper look at some of the features in a moment. The final section of the console is the Configure section. This is where you can configure your analytics audiences, check on your custom user properties, and access Debug View to see analytics events coming in live while developing and testing your application. Now, each of these features is exactly the same as the one you'd find in the Firebase console, and can be configured here or within Firebase. Now, before we go exploring some of the deep analysis tools in the Explore section, there's a new feature to call out right here that isn't available in Firebase, and that's the Comparisons tool. But before I demonstrate how to use it in Google Analytics, it'd be really useful to get an overview of what it's intended to do. So hey, Sumit, mind giving us a breakdown of the Comparisons feature?
Well, certainly, Kevin. So the comparison tool lets you, well, compare different user segments to each other. It does this by allowing you to select different dimensions you want to include or exclude for the user groups you want to select in your comparisons. And what do we mean by dimensions? Well, it's an intentionally general term because it can include a lot of different kinds of selection criteria to define the user group you want to use in your comparison. For example, one dimension you can select from is the automatically collected user properties in your analytics data, such as demographics like age, country, and language. You can also select from custom user properties you've set up in your app. So let's say you have a premium users in your app, or maybe you're collecting the amount of virtual coins your users have, like we do in Bingo Blast. You can set custom user properties to mark your premium users or gamers with more than 10,000 virtual coins, and include that dimension in your comparison as well. There are also device dimensions. to select device models, brands, or app versions, and an acquisition dimension where you can select campaign tracking dimension values like campaign sources or mediums, or add campaign dimensions like the ad network your users came in from. Hey Kevin, can you show us how it's done in the console?
For sure. If you look up top on the home page, you'll see that there's a default applied labeled all users. And right next to that is the add comparison button where I can start creating and applying new comparisons. Now let's say I want to learn more about my Bingo Blast players and to see a breakdown of which ones are most active by different age groups so that I can figure out where my biggest opportunities are and where my most active users are. I'll start by clicking on Add Comparison and select the age dimension. For my first bucket of users, I want to look at those who are between the ages of 18 to 34, so I'll select these two ranges here. Now, if I wanted to, I could also add more dimensions to this, like gender or language. But for now, let's keep it simple and stick to age. So I'll hit apply, and then after a couple seconds, you can see that the comparison is showing up in the users chart here, as well as all the additional charts and cards below. But we still need to add a couple more comparisons so that we can actually gain meaningful insights from this data. So let's add another comparison for age. I'll click on Add and add the age dimension once more. This time, I'll select users between the ages of 35 to 54. Then I'll click on Apply, and now this new comparison is also showing up and being applied to my reporting charts and data. Now let's add one more comparison for the last age group I want to include. And that will be for users between the ages of 55 and above. I'll click on Add Comparison one last time, select the age dimension, and pick the age ranges 55 to 64 and 65 and above. Then when I click on OK and apply this comparison, we'll now see that the reporting data has the final comparison added in, and I'm ready to dig into the data. So I can see some useful data here. For example, I can see that the number of users in the 35 to 54 age group is about 65% larger than that of my 18 to 34 group. And my 54 and above group is almost 71% larger than that of my 18 to 34. As I scroll down to the breakdown by countries, I can see that the top 7 for each comparison are different, and especially so for my age 18 to 34 group. And aside from that, the top 3 countries are almost the same across each comparison group. Scrolling farther down to the revenue section, I can see that the revenue distributions across platforms by percentage are similar across age groups, with slightly more of the revenue coming from iOS users for my age 55 and over user group. Another interesting insight is if I hover over the Android portion of the revenue for each user group. I can see that although my age 55 and over group accounts for the most number of users, those who are in the 35 to 54 group account for a much larger portion of my total revenue on Android. Using these insights in combination can help inform where I should target my growth campaigns. From this analysis, I learned which groups are lagging and which groups are generating the most revenue. From there, I can actually consider if I want to use a growth campaign to increase the number of users in my lagging group, or to further engage the highest revenue generating groups instead. Now, another useful feature about the comparisons tool is that once you've applied it, you can see the comparisons throughout other parts of the product. For example, if I go to the users or the demographics report, I can see the comparisons being applied there as well. And that allows me to compare and contrast regardless of where I am in Google Analytics. Now that we've finished this tour and checked out the comparisons tool, it's time to dig into the Explore section and to look at the powerful techniques to help me uncover insights about my app. There are quite a few in here, and rather than covering them all, let's focus on a couple that we think are most important or most relevant to Firebase developers. Now first, let's talk about funnel analysis. Hey Sumit, I heard that this was particularly important to Firebase developers. Can you tell us a bit more?
Funnels. Yes, if there's one analytics feature in the Firebase console that I've heard plenty of feedback and feature requests about, it is funnels. So here's the thing. Funnels actually exist in the Firebase console, but they're what are called open funnels. What's an open funnel? Well, I'll see your question and raise you another and ask what's a funnel in general. For those of you who don't know, I thought it might be helpful to cover the concept of funnels since not everyone has encountered them before. So a funnel looks like this. If you've ever taken a chemistry class before, it probably looks familiar to you. The idea behind a funnel in analytics is similar to how a funnel works in physical reality. As you pour in a large volume of liquid at the top of the funnel, it starts to narrow down as it travels down and gets smaller and smaller towards the bottom. In analytics, we use the concept of funnels to answer questions like, out of all the users who have started a game in Bingo Blast, which ones leveled up to the next stage, and out of those, which ones moved on to make an in-app purchase? Similar to a physical funnel, the number of users typically narrows down as you travel further through the funnel. That is, if we're dealing with closed funnels. There's also something called open funnels, which present data a bit differently. Each part of an open funnel represents an event, just like with the closed funnel. However, in an open funnel, the number of users counted in each part of the funnel are out of the total number of users in your app, and not just the number of users who completed the previous step of the funnel. That means that in an open funnel, you might have a distribution like this for the same session start, level up, and in-app purchase events we just saw. Notice how the level up events is greater than the number of session start events? Isn't that weird? How can there be more users who logged a level up event than the number of users who even opened the app in the first place? The answer is we're looking at open funnels. Since this is an open funnel, the count of users who logged level up events in the second part of the funnel is out of the total number of users in your app, not the number of users who started a session in the first step. Combine that with the fact that players can log multiple level up events, and you end up with a situation where the second part of the funnel is larger than the first, and you have a conversion rate higher than 100%. Now, by default, funnels in the Firebase console are open funnels, and this is something that a lot of Firebase developers were sometimes confused about. In fact, we received plenty of feedback to provide closed funnels to analyze analytics data, since developers typically expect funnels to be closed. Well, while these aren't available in the Firebase console, they are available in the GA console. Also, in addition to that, funnel analysis reports in Google Analytics have a lot more features that can get into much more detailed breakdowns of your data. Let's take a look. Okay, so we're back in the console and we're about to take a look at the first analysis tool in the Explore section. So I'll expand the analysis menu here and then select the funnel analysis technique from the selection below. Now I'll create a new funnel analysis by clicking on the plus button right up here and then selecting funnel analysis. Okay, I'm ready to start. So let's take a look at the previous example I was looking at. Let's say I want to perform a funnel analysis to answer the question, how many users who start a game session then go on to level up and then go on to making a purchase in Bingo Blast? At the basic level, what this amounts to is creating a series of steps, with each step building a part of the funnel. The first step will be a user starting a session. The second step will be triggering a level up event, and the last step will be completing an in-app purchase. Now, at first glance, there's a lot of stuff going on in this interface, and we'll take a look at it in a moment, but for these basic steps to create our first funnel, all we need to look at is the steps section highlighted here. So let me edit the steps for this funnel analysis. If you've used the audience builder in analytics before, you'll notice that this interface is very similar. First thing up top is to name the first step of my funnel. I'll put the name Session Start, and now just below that, I can select the condition for this step. For the condition, I just want to select the Session Start event that gets logged when a user starts playing Bingo Blast from the Events menu here. So I'll select Events and scroll down to Session Start and select it from the menu. Now already, there are a couple of cool things that happened here. First, see that summary card at the right? This is actually updated with the total number of users and events counted in my funnel based on current conditions. it will also automatically update as I add more. This is a unique feature in the Google Analytics console that isn't available in the Firebase console when creating a new funnel. And there's also another cool thing that happened here as well. You might have noticed that when I selected my condition, there are way more than just the events to choose from. I could also create conditions based on dimensions. These include automatically collected user properties like age, country, and device category, as well as custom user properties registered in my game. So let's say I wanted to take a look at a specific age group and apply that to the condition to the first step of my funnel. For example, users in the 18 to 34 age group. Well, I can just add another condition, select dimensions, and then my automatically collected user properties, and then select age. I'll then select the 18 to 24 and 25 to 34 age groups as values to include, and it's done. My funnel is now including all users within the 18 to 34 age group who have logged a session start event. Also note that the summary card to the right has been updated with the user and events counts based on the newly added condition. The ability to select more than just events when creating a funnel is something unique to Google Analytics and can come in handy for more fine-grained analyses of your Firebase app analytics data. To continue with my example though, I'll remove the age condition and continue adding on my second step in my funnel, which I'll name Leveled Up. Also, you'll notice that just above that, I have an option to choose how this second step should be counted. I can choose if I want to count it if it occurs anytime after the first step, or if it occurs immediately after the first step. I can also select the time window for how long after the first step I want the second step to occur. In this case, I want to include users who leveled up anytime after their session started, so I'll set step 2 to count if it indirectly follows step 1, and won't specify a specific time window for when step 2 occurred. Now I'll add the condition, which is basically when a user has logged a level up event, indicating that they have indeed leveled up. So I'll click on Add New Condition, select Events, scroll down to the Level Up event, and then select it. Notice how after I've selected it, the summary card updates once again at the right of the screen. Now I'm ready to add the final step of my funnel, which is the action of making a purchase in Bingo Blast. So I'll click on Add Step once again and name the step Made Purchase. This step should be counted no matter when it happens after the level up event in step 2. So I'll leave this set as is indirectly followed by and leave the time window unspecified. Now I'll add the condition, which is when a user has made a purchase and logged an in-app purchase event. So I'll click on Add New Condition, select the events category, and then scroll down and select the in-app purchase event. Okay, my funnel is complete, and the summary card has been updated to show that I have about 100 users who have taken all the steps defined in my funnel. Now that my funnel is ready, I'll hit Apply at the top right, and I'm taken to the funnel analysis view where I can start digging into the data. First, let's take a look at the funnel graph analyses. So I can see that I have about 6,600 active users who started a game session. Among those, about 3,200 have leveled up in the game. That's about a 47.7% completion rate, which I can see up top up here. And it's also a drop of about 3,500 users between starting a session and leveling up. For the 3,200 users who did level up, about 100 of them actually made a purchase, leading to a 3.1% completion rate and a drop of about 3,000 users between leveling up and making a purchase. Just below the funnel graph is a tabular breakdown of my data. I can see the number of users included in each step, the completion rate going from one step to the next, and the number of abandonments and the abandonment rate between each step. Now let's look at some of the additional tools in the funnel analysis feature that we didn't look at before back in the left-hand side. So first we have the tab settings pane. Here we have a segment comparison section along with a prompt to drop or select a segment. Then we have the steps section, which we just used, and below that a breakdown section with another prompt to drop or select a dimension. The segment comparisons and breakdown features we can apply to our funnel are quite powerful, and are unique to Google Analytics. Let's look at the segment comparison feature first. So using this feature, we can segment the users in each step of the funnel to figure out things like, say, the number of users from different countries and how the funnel graphs for these users compare. The full list of available segments is in the Variables pane to the left of the Tab Settings pane. You can also create any custom segment you'd like by clicking on the plus sign. There are also ready-made suggested segments and template segments you can choose from as well. But let's say in my case, what I want to know is what the funnel breakdown looks like for users in my top Asian countries and how the data compares. These countries would be Japan, India, and Thailand. So let me create those segments now. So I'll create my first segment and select User Segment and add a new condition. Here, it will be the country ID user property, which I'll set to JP for Japan. Now I'll do the same for India, except this time the country ID value will be IN. And do the same for Thailand, setting the country ID to TH this time. And now that I've got my funnel data segmented by country, I can compare them in both the funnel graphs and the tabular data below them. Now let's look at the breakdown section in the Tab Settings pane. So here, I can break down all the tabular data shown from my funnels by additional dimensions to get even more insights into my data. The full list of dimensions I can choose from are here in the Variables pane. I can add new dimensions from a number of different categories as well, like acquisition channels to see which sources and mediums my user came from, advertising to see a breakdown of users from different ad conversions, user behavior, like which other events they triggered while playing the game, or which screens they spent the most time on, e-commerce events, generic events, and more. In this case, let's say I want to get a breakdown of users in my top Asian countries by platform and see how many Android users and how many iOS users I have in each step of the funnel. So I'll navigate to the Users section, scroll down to Platform, and then select it and hit Apply. Now I've got Platform listed as an additional dimension in my Variables pane. So now I can drag and drop the platform dimension into my breakdown in the Tab Settings pane to have it applied to my data. So I'll do that, and voila! I can now view the platform breakdown for each of my users in each country and in each part of the funnel in my tabular data. I can also view the completion rates and abandonment rates for each of these users across the steps of the funnel too. So the funnel analysis is a very powerful technique you can use on your Firebase app data through Google Analytics. And the best part is that yes, they are closed funnels, which is a big deal and big ask from Firebase developers. But if ever you miss open funnels, you can always use this toggle here to turn this into an open funnel, or just use funnels in the Firebase console. Hey Kevin, I think there was another technique you wanted to show us in Google Analytics, is that right?
Yeah, segment overlap. While the funnel analysis technique is great for figuring out how many users move on or drop off from critical steps of my flow, sometimes you may just want to get a better understanding of your user base as a whole. You may, for example, want to know which traffic sources your users are coming from, what age groups they belong to, and which platforms they're using, as well as maybe which countries they're coming from. Knowing all this information can tell you what kind of audiences you should be targeting for your next campaign to get even more users into your app. But now let's say you only have a limited budget to spend. Should you spend the money on users in the 18 to 34 age group, users who are on iOS only, the intersection of the two, and how do you factor in countries? To answer questions like this and to figure out how you should target your next campaign, you need to figure out the right combination to get you the largest and most opportunistic user group. To do that, you can use the segment overlap technique. This technique allows you to create and choose segments you want to use to identify overlaps between them, both visually and in a tabular form. You can also add breakdowns across different dimensions and metrics, just as you had done with the funnel analysis technique. Now let's use this technique to solve a real problem. In Bingo Blast, we haven't invested a lot of money in paid traffic before, but I want to change that. I want to start by figuring out a good audience I can target that will provide me with both additional users coming into Bingo Blast and insights into whether my campaign strategy is working. So let's go into the Google Analytics console and see how using segment overlaps can help. So now I'm back in the Google Analytics console and looking at a new segment overlap technique. You'll notice that the variables and tab settings panes to the left include segments, dimensions, and metrics, just as you had seen when Sumit was looking at the funnel analysis technique. But in the analysis section, we see a visual representation for our very first segment, which is all users in my app. What I want to do is to start figuring out the characteristics that make up the majority of my user base so that I know how to target my marketing campaign. First, let's see what interests are the most common within my user base. I'll create a new segment to apply in the overlap analysis by clicking on the plus button, selecting user segment, and then adding a condition for the segment. In this case, the condition I want to apply is the user interest category. So I'll go into the dimensions, automatic, and scroll down to interests, then select that. As for which one to pick, I'm pretty sure that media and entertainment will encompass the majority of my users, but there are multiple categories here. Would it be the one with gamers, casual, and social, or the comics and animation fans? My intuition is that it'd be the gamers interest group, but let's validate that with our tool. I'll start by selecting the gamers casual group. I can see the summary card update and tell me that there are about 4,100 users included in this segment before I even apply it. Now, let's see what it looks like if I switch to the other one. Wow, this group actually has 6,000 users, which is even more than the last one, and definitely not what I initially thought would happen. But it's a good example of how a tool like segment overlap can help you validate or disprove your assumptions. Now let's move on and apply this segment to my analysis. I'll name this Comics and Animation and click Save and Apply. Okay, now I get a nice visual for how my users stand amongst my global base. But before I go ahead and decide that these are the users I want to target, there are some other important factors I want to fold in as well. For example, I want to make sure that I'm targeting users who are most likely to spend in my game. So let me apply another segment for purchasers, and let's verify that with the overlap. So I'll create another segment by clicking on the plus button, select user segment, and add another condition. This time, the condition is going to be based on the in-app purchase event. So I'll select events from the menu, scroll down to in-app purchase, and then select it. Now let's name this one purchasers and click Save and Apply. Cool, I've got another interesting insight here. Despite the fact that the majority of my users are in the comics and animation group, there's a significant amount of purchasers who are outside of that. And looking at the totals table below, I can see the breakdown of users for each segment. Specifically, I see that the total purchasers in my app is 127, but the total users who are both purchasers and comics is only 91. So if I were just to target the comics group, I would miss a significant portion of my potential purchasers. I'll have to make a slight adjustment here. And for the purposes of this video, let's say I'm okay with the fact that I might lose some purchasers, and let's just dig even deeper into that overlap. There's a useful feature in this view that allows me to create a new segment from any combination in the table below. In this case, I want to combine the users in the purchaser segment and the comics segment. So I'll right-click on that row and click on Create Segment from Selection. This will open up the segment editor, which allows me to combine the conditions from the segments I previously selected. Now I'll just click on Save, and ta-da! I have this new combined segment instantly created. At this point, you may be wondering, why am I combining segments and not just keeping them separate and then moving forward? Well, part of the reason is that you can only have 3 segments at a time. By combining the previous two, I can effectively discard them and add even more layers on top of my current analysis. The other reason, and this ties back to why I'm doing this in the first place, is that I can create an audience out of the intersecting segment and use that for targeting purposes. So now that I've combined my purchasers and comic enthusiasts, I can remove their individual segments and will delete them from my list of variables. So let's go ahead and do that. First, deleting my purchaser segment, and then deleting the comics and animation segment. There. Now I can add the combined segment to my analysis by dragging it over to the list of segment comparisons. I can probably remove the all user segment as well, so let's clean that up too. Okay, now that I'm just looking at my comics purchasers, I can break it down even further. Let's see what the breakdown is between my Android and iOS users. I already have these segments created, so it's as simple as dragging and dropping them in. Looking at the breakdown below, I can see that virtually all comics purchasers are on Android. And that's pretty powerful because when I think about how I want to optimize ad campaign, it allows me to really keep focused. To take it one step even further, I'll clean up my workspace by removing the iOS users and consider one more factor, age. This time, instead of adding a new segment, I can actually add a new dimension directly in the table. To do that, it's as simple as dragging and dropping the age dimension from the variables pane onto the breakdown. And after letting Google Analytics process the data, the tabular view is updated so that I can analyze it even further. And looking at this information, I can see that the majority of my users are within the 25 to 64 age groups. That's great because now I can actually refine my ad campaign. As you've just seen, this was just one quick example of how you can use the segment overlap tool, but there's so many more use cases where this tool can come in handy. So we invite you to check it out for yourself using your own Firebase data and to perform your own analysis using the automatically collected events or the custom events that you think are most important to your business. And with that, Sumit, are we ready to wrap up?
Yes, we are, Kevin. It's about that time. Well, folks, we hope some of the tools we covered in the Firebase Developer's Guide to Google Analytics were helpful for you. Now, we only covered a handful of the tools available in Google Analytics, but there are plenty more. For example, you may have seen the path analysis tool in the Analytics menu, which lets you get a closer look at how your users are navigating through the different sections of your app. Or you might have seen the User Explorer tool, which allows you to perform analyses at the individual user level rather than at the aggregate level to get another perspective into your user data. Please check out the docs linked in the description to learn more about these tools, as well as the tools we covered in this video. And hey, if you'd like us to do another video on more of these tools in the future, let us know by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, and maybe we'll be back with a part 2. In the meantime, have fun analyzing your Firebase app data with Google Analytics, and get out there and build something great for your users. Goodbye for now.
Bye.
Oh, wow. I had heard some good stories about this video, and they weren't kidding. By the way, I heard that some of you might have missed some of the intro. So my name is Frank or Puff, and this week's episode of Firebase Live, we are diving into analyzing your web and mobile application usage with Google Analytics and Firebase. And we just saw a good half hour of strong content about that, and I finally know what an open and a closed funnel are. Now, that means that we are ready to start answering your questions, because if you have any questions, then please post them below the video, and we'll try to address them, about Google Analytics for Firebase in general, or other parts of Firebase. And we'll try to answer them in the next, what time do we have? About 15 to 20 minutes. So it's a good moment to actually invite some experts, because while I learned a lot from this video, I can't answer all questions. So to help with that, I'd like to welcome the speakers from the video, Sumit and Kevin. Can you both join me, please?
Hello.
Hey, Sumit. Hey, Kevin. Great to see you all here. And thank you for that video. That was really great content. I don't even dare asking how long you worked on that. Now, before we dive into analytics questions, I always like asking one of my questions. And my question is, what's your favorite Firebase holiday? And we're going to start with Sumit for that one.
Firebase holiday. That's a tough one for me. I think that, for me, the actual holiday, the holiday season, I think that would be the best one because every holiday season, the Firebase team gets together to put together a holiday video, which if you haven't seen before, they're really fun. I participated in a couple of them virtually because I'm in New York. So that's always a lot of fun. So I think that would be my favorite one.
I love that one indeed. And Kevin, do you actually know what Firebase holidays are? You might not. So.
Not entirely, but I am aware of the videos that Sumit mentioned. But yeah, for the audience, maybe you can also speak to it. And for the video that Sumit's talking about, it's a fantastic show, and I actually love the one from 2018 where Todd is sitting in front of a fireplace on a little TV, and so it's just a fantastic video with Sumit, of course, making a cameo.
We always love actually doing some of these self-mockery videos, right? We do that. Yeah, the Firebase holidays, actually, we just had Bring Your Pine Up to Work Day, and we have lots of these holidays. My favorite is probably actually Wear Cowboy Boot Day, which is, I think, somewhere in August, so it's probably coming up. And that means that even working from home, I might be wearing very noisy cowboy boots. Okay, let's quickly get to the first real question. And let's see, I think this is a question from Joaquin, and apologies if I mispronounce your name. But they're asking, is it possible to export data from Firebase Performance to another dashboard or analytics platform? And Sumit, I think this is a great question for you.
Yes, certainly. So yes, it is possible. And by Firebase Performance, I imagine mean the performance monitoring. And it is possible to export that into other platforms that you want to use to analyze it. And that's through a BigQuery integration. So Firebase has BigQuery integrated with it. It can export analytics data, Firebase performance monitoring, Crashlytics, and so forth. So that's the way you'd do it, is you'd export into BigQuery, and then from there you can do whatever you'd like with your data and import into any other platforms that you need.
Yeah, no, that is indeed perfect, right? And indeed, it looks like it was about performance monitoring. And then the good thing there is that you can make combinations, right, between Firebase performance monitoring data and maybe our analytics data and some of your own data, right? So that you can build these composite reports that honestly the Firebase dashboard would never have, or even the Google Analytics dashboard, most likely.
Yeah, on that point, Crashlytics is another thing you can export to BigQuery, and a lot of developers do export Crashlytics and analytics, and then see how crashes are impacting different analytics data as well. Yeah,
exactly. Perfect use case. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the next question. We have a lot of them to get through, it seems. This one is from Crystal, and Crystal is asking, right now it looks like you can't backfill an integration to BigQuery with historical data prior to when you enabled the integration. Are there any workarounds for this issue? And Kevin, this sounds like the perfect question for you to answer.
Yeah, sure thing. So Crystal, it's actually a question that we get a lot of times when it comes to our support channels. And then a lot of our customers ask us the same thing as well. Unfortunately, the way BigQuery works in the data processing pipeline, it's on a go-forward basis from the point that you actually do the integration. And so what you want to do as you're thinking about setting up your projects and your analytics integrations is to actually start that process as soon as possible so that you can actually get that data out there and the data pipelines flowing going forward. So despite that, hope that at least on a moving forward basis, you're able to make use of that, because BigQuery, as Sumit alluded to earlier, is a very powerful tool, and it gives you so much flexibility with working with your data in ways that only you can do.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great answer. Sumit, is there anything you wanted to add there, or did Kevin pretty much nail it?
No, Kevin nailed it. We do get that request a lot, but yeah, at the moment it's only a go forward solution. So it's just about integrating it as soon as you can, so that you have all the data there.
Are there actually sort of any like disadvantages to enabling it early? Is there one reason why you might want to wait for a bit, or like if you look forward to doing your own type of analysis, should you probably enable BigQuery straight away?
Kevin, that's a good question. Oh, for Kevin, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your setup also with the cloud products and the data storage. So you do want to do it at a time when you know your schema is roughly consistent and in the way you want it. So there's a fine balancing act. So you don't want to honestly incur the additional storage costs, right? That would come with it if you are having a lot of volume. Same with when you think about a schema and actually implementing it on an SDK and from a tagging perspective, you want to make sure that as you go through development cycles and your design process, purely from an information architecture standpoint, that you have enough confidence in what you've put together. And at that point, then move forward to using this, right? But you can also do it in smaller sets too.
Okay, got it. So it's when your schema is stable and probably not too early because the storage cost might be a factor. Sumit, does this cover what you wanted to say about it also? Or?
Not exactly. I think Kevin did a better job on what I was going to say. So just whatever Kevin said, I'll go with that for that one.
Okay. Which honestly, when it comes to analytics, makes sense, right? Kevin builds this. So okay, let's move on to the next. Yeah, let's move on to the next question. This one is from Ankita. And Ankita is asking, before Firebase reporting, Google Analytics had time tracking. How can we implement this in Firebase Analytics and display it then into Google Analytics? And I think, Kevin, you probably know best what this means because this one is way above my understanding of analytics.
Yeah, and by time tracking in this case, I presume we're talking about maybe time spent and engagement time from an end user's perspective, right? How much time are my users spending on a given page or a screen? So in Outpost Web, which underlies Firebase as a whole, the analytics pieces of it, it's more of an event-centric model, and you want to look at the event, user engagement, and then also the screen views, right? So for example, in Google Analytics, there is a card and reporting tool that allows you to see screen views. And when you dig into the Explorer report, it actually shows you a tabular view for every single screen, the number of users, as well as the engagement time on each of those screens. So that is a great out-of-the-box tool that you can use. But if that's not sufficient, you can also still, like we said before, pull the data out through BQ. And I think even on the live chat, there was a link out to an article that Todd put out there from a while back with an example of how our session time and engagement time has changed back last year. And so he includes there a sample query that you can run, but you can further expand on that to do what you need. And if that doesn't meet your needs and you think it'll help others, we're always open to feedback, and we would love to have that come through, and just with more details on your use cases, of course.
Yeah, and probably people, right, if they have feedback, we probably would recommend to reach out to Firebase support, right, and leave your feature requests or honestly bug reports there so that we can address them. Hey, I know we have a next question ready, but I can't see it right now on my screen. So let's have a look at the card and see what the question is. Oh, right. How are these analytics that we've just seen integrated with other Firebase products? And Sumit, I think this is like a perfect question for you. So how can we use these analytics with other Firebase products?
So you can use them with a lot of other Firebase products to target your users based on what audience they kind of fit. There's remote config, there's A/B testing, there's Firebase cloud messaging or notifications that you'd send out. And for each of those products, you can use analytics and the audiences you create there to target who you want to send notifications to, how you want the look and feel of your app to look for specific audiences for others versus others. A really good example is, let's say if you have an audience of users who are purchasers in your app or frequent purchasers of, let's say some of the virtual goods that you have in your game, for example. For them, you probably want to reduce the ad experience, right? If you have ads that are also supporting your game. You can use remote config to say, okay, for users who are part of that audience of purchasers, for them, I'll set my remote config flag to show them the store experience where they can actually buy those goods. And for other users who might not make a purchase, get an ad experience because you need to make money somehow. So that's kind of like one example. Same thing with notifications. You can target those groups or any other groups you define. So that's one of the key ways that you can use analytics and the audiences there. In addition to just understanding what's going on in your app, right? Just with analytics in general and the reports and the data that we just saw in either the Firebase console or the analytics console. So that would be kind of anything to add to that, Kevin, or anything I missed there?
No, I think that's a great summary.
Yeah, that's indeed a great summary. And indeed, right, you showed in the video very clearly, right, how you can analyze the data. And thank you for the explanation of how you can then use it in Firebase. I think this might actually have been a question I posted, by the way. Let's see, we have a next question. This one is from Marcin. And they're asking, how do cities dimensions work? So is it based on the IP or something on based like the actual location, the latitude, longitude, if the mobile phone is using the GPS, right? So how does Firebase know the location, and in this case, specifically the city? Kevin, this is probably one for you, is my feel.
Sure. Yeah, the demographic information is actually derived based on, and so in order to actually get the demographic interests and other types of information that Google provides out of the box, you do need IDFA or AdID. I think we have this in our Help Center documentation, and it may have been a part of the response in the live chat, but just to put it out there, it requires that, but also just to directly answer your question, the location information is actually based on the IP address, not based on a lat or long that we derive otherwise. So it is based on that, but again, you need to make sure that you are collecting certain information, and I think potentially even Google Signals in the future as well. So there are certain pieces that you need and predecessors, and the Help Center article that we posted should give you a great starting point.
Nice. Sumit, anything to add there on how to use this and how we determine it, or did Kevin like you?
That was definitely a Kevin question.
Yeah, it does. Actually, I think the next one might be a you or me question, but let's have a look at that. This one is from Gregors. And again, apologies if I mangle your name, but at least then Kevin and Sumit don't have to do it. And they're asking, how about a Flutter integration? Is there a chance or a way to auto-track screens in Flutter? And does any of you know? Because I can take a guess, otherwise I have an idea. But Sumit, have you done enough Flutter?
I've not done enough Flutter. I just know the Flutter Fire plugin, and I believe it does have support for analytics. Beyond that, I'm not sure. So if you know more about it, then this would be a great one.
In that case, I'll take this one indeed. No, there is indeed, you're right. The integration of Firebase with Flutter goes through what we call the Flutter Fire libraries, and there is an integration with Google Analytics there, right? So that means that you can log events from within your Flutter application. Now, there is, as far as I know, no integration yet that it does auto screen tracking. So you have to explicitly log your own screen events, which from my experience with Flutter sort of makes sense because, well, unless we integrate into the navigation system, the router system, which I don't think we have, right? You can always log your own events. And honestly, I often do like my own screen level also. But it would be a great feature. So if it isn't in there and you think it would be a worthwhile addition, then I highly recommend that you log the feature request on the open source repo of the Flutter Fire plugin, which is somewhere under github.com/Firebase. And then I think it's probably called Flutter Fire there, but just check the repo and log it there. And that's a great question, Gregors. Thank you very much. I think we're ready for the next question. Let me check. And yes, there it is. It's without a name, so it might be one of our own team members, but it's like, I like that Firebase provides free and unlimited analytics, but it's missing some of the features that I have inside like another analytics product. Can I use both Firebase and another analytics product in my app? And Kevin, this actually sounds like one that's great for you.
Yeah. So our Google Analytics for Firebase, like the SDK, for example, does work. I mean, you can add that as well as other types of analytics SDKs within your own app. And the two should just work. I mean, they won't work. There aren't direct integrations between Google Analytics SDK and other ones per se, but you can continue to use, I mean, there's nothing about ours that prevents you from using other tools. Now, they may not integrate the same way with Firebase products, the way it's described earlier. But at the same time, if what you're looking for is a solution to, so that answers the question of what if you want to collect information with different mechanisms, right, up front at the beginning. Now, if you wanted to bring information together, again, that's where tools like BigQuery allow you to actually pull the information. If you want to take it to your data warehouse and to aggregate that information on your own, you can obviously do that as well. And so I don't know if you guys have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd add is that I have seen some developers who have integrated multiple analytics libraries because they might have, some other applications or, great viewing tools on other analytics with other analytics frameworks that they're using, and they want to continue to be able to use that. but they also plug in Google Analytics because they want to take advantage of things like remote config and targeted notifications and that kind of thing, as we mentioned earlier. So it's not uncommon to have that kind of setup. So we've seen that before. So yeah, if it just so happens that you have your own analytics solution already, or one that you prefer, but you want to use some of these other Firebase products, you can integrate both and then kind of use both of them.
That's a perfect answer. Thank you. And that was a great question. I love how much I'm learning about analytics here. Thank you both so much. I think we have a few more minutes for questions. So let's quickly move on to the next one. This one is from Clive. Clive is asking, can I trigger events based off the result of an analytics funnel, for example? And I honestly don't know who should answer this. Tell me, who wants to take this one?
I think I can take it, but so just to make sure I understand the question, is it from triggering a function from an event or from a funnel? I think I missed that last part.
It might indeed be a cloud function. I'm not completely certain, honestly, but
okay.
Let's assume cloud function, right?
Okay. Yeah. So at the moment, for apps that are either Android or iOS, so basically a mobile platform app, you can trigger a cloud function from analytics data. So if you have a given conversion event, let's say a user invites their friend over to the app or something like that, and then they get a notification for 50% off their next purchase. You can use cloud functions and set them up over that conversion event of them inviting their friend. And then when that gets triggered, the cloud function could, for example, use the FCM, the Firebase Cloud Messaging admin SDK, to send a notification out, or whatever else you want to do in your cloud function. So it is possible for that. For web at the moment, for web conversion events that are logged, at the moment it doesn't work for that use case of firing off a cloud function based off that. So it's something we're aware of, though, and that we're thinking about. But that's kind of the current state of that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great answer. I think, actually, I might have attributed this one to the wrong asker. This question was from Clive. And I quickly checked in the follow-up on the chat, and it was indeed about cloud functions. Yeah, so a great answer indeed. And yeah, I look forward to being able to do this for web apps also. And that brings us to our final question, and it's a long one from Marcy in this case. And it's like, is it possible to see the source, medium, or campaign data from Google Ads in a Google Analytics app with Firebase Analytics if I'm using dynamic links in Google Display campaigns? For now, I only see data from the UAC campaigns. And Kevin, this is a lot of magic words. Do you know the answer to this?
That's one I'd have to check with my attribution counterparts on, to be frank, and just so that we don't give a wrong response there. But I know that there's a lot of work going on between our App Plus Web Property working group, and we have a lot of engineers working on this. As you still see that there are a lot of features that are being rolled out continually in this new property type, and that includes things like integrations with ads. And so additional features you'll see coming out over the coming months, weeks, etc. And so if you don't see it, that doesn't mean that it won't be there, or that you're missing something. It could mean that we have stuff on a roadmap that's coming to bear. But I think that is one that we'd have to verify and get back to you guys on with an accurate answer.
And that makes total sense. And I know that indeed you're constantly working on new features here. So can we agree to one thing, that you are going to check with your counterparts and then you'll answer below in the Q&A? Does that make sense?
Yep, will do.
Perfect. Okay. Hey, in that case, that's all we had time for today. We had a lot more questions, but I saw that our team was actually also coming to that already. So I want to thank my two subject matter experts for today. I want to thank Kevin from the analytics team and Sumit from the Firebase team. Thank you both for joining. It was great having you, and thanks for the great video.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. For sure.
Yeah, thank you and thank you everybody out there in the Firebase community for using our products. Yeah, this is all for you guys.
Yeah, and please keep the feedback coming and questions coming as well. This video is going to be posted later, and there'll be time to post questions in the comments, and that's always great feedback for us about what you want to do with analytics.
Yeah, no, perfect. Hey, thank you both. And that gives us a chance to start wrapping up here. We're right on time, so this is great. So I want to thank everyone at home for joining us today. And remember, all the content is available from the resources tab above or from the agenda below me, right? So that means that if you want to learn more about how to unit test with Firebase, or how to develop mostly locally on your local machine with the emulator suites and the new user interface that we built on that, or how to sign into your iOS application with Apple Sign-In from your Swift code, then check out the video links that we have, and also check out the code labs. And we just now released a new code lab on analyzing the performance of your web applications as your real users experience it, right, using Firebase. And of course, give our demo a go and leave some feedback, like what you liked about it and what use case you'd like to see next. Okay, now if you'd like to learn more when we have new content coming out, then subscribe to our YouTube channel. There should be a link around here somewhere. And if you'd like to learn about the latest news from Firebase every month, sign up for a newsletter and we'll send you an email. And with that, it's really high time to wrap things up. So be sure to join us next week for the final episode of Firebase Live, where we'll be looking at analytics again, but then for game developers. And if that sounds like something you'll be interested in, we'll be here again next week, live, right on this channel.